Hey, what's up everyone? Best in West here, and today I'm going to be going over a Pokemon that has been overlooked and undervalued. I feel like it has a very unique position in this meta, and we're going to be going over its matchups and the best way to use it in the Sinister Cup. So without further ado, this is Best's Breakdown, Girafarig. So quick breakdown on Girafarig. Girafarig is a Psychic and Normal type Pokemon. The Psychic typing is what allows Girafarig to fit into the Sinister Cup, and that Normal typing makes it the only normal Pokemon that fits in the Sinister meta. So it is going to be double resisting those Ghost type moves, but that Psychic typing is going to be picking up a single weakness to Ghosts. So 2-1, that equals 1 times resistant to Ghost type moves, meaning it's also the only Pokemon to resist Ghost type moves in this cup. The preferred moveset is Confusion, Thunderbolt, and Psychic, and this past update really made Psychic more viable with the reduced energy cost and the chance of a debuff. Psychic is definitely the way to go over Mirror Coat. Mirror Coat alone is just a terrible move, and I think it's around the same amount of energy as Thunderbolt anyways, so baiting shields is not really, it's not really going to come into play in this specific case. So my recommendation is go ahead and get the Psychic as the second move. If you have built up energy going into the next Pokemon, you might be able to nuke a fighter or deal neutral damage against a potential Ghost type Pokemon. So I put together this infographic to kind of lay out how Girafarig does against the meta of the Sinister Cup. And starting from left to right, you see the positive matchups for Girafarig, and as you go to the right clockwise, the matchups get worse and worse. But the latest update, Girafarig actually picked up some positive matchups, and I'll go over them a little bit later, and I'll specify which ones Girafarig picked up due to the Power Up Punch debuff. I guess Power Up Punch nerf. Most of it is going to be from the fighters, right? But I'll talk about that in a bit. But on the left side, you see Haunter, Poliwrath, Drifblim, Gallade, and Hitmonchan. So Haunter is pretty much the preferred moveset for Haunter in this cup is all Ghost. And like I mentioned before, Girafarig is going to be resisting all Ghost type moves. And it's going to be dealing super effective damage with that Confusion due to Haunter's poison typing. So that's just a positive matchup, especially in the lead. A lot of people like to use Haunter in the lead, so that's where Girafarig will be good in the lead. Poliwrath is also going to be weak to Girafarig's Confusion, and Poliwrath also is hitting Girafarig for even less now because Power Up Punch got a debuff, or not a debuff, but a nerf. Moving right along, Drifblim, again, Drifblim's main preferred moveset is going to be all Ghosts, so Girafarig is going to be resisting all of those. Gallade, the preferred moveset for Gallade, I believe, is going to be Confusion. You do have to watch out for that close combat, but other than that, Girafarig is going to be dealing neutral damage back to Gallade. So that's a positive matchup for Girafarig. And again, all of these are in 0, 1, and 2 shield situations. So in uneven shield situations, you might have to, these numbers don't necessarily apply, but it gives you a good idea of how Girafarig will work against an even shielding situation. And last but not least, Girafarig does pick up that Hitmonchan in, I believe it was the 1 shield situation. Before the Power Up Punch nerf, Hitmonchan was actually in the square with Marowak, but because of the Power Up Punch nerf, Girafarig is going to be able to beat it in all even shielding scenarios. So that was a big win for Girafarig right there. Now, looking at Alolan Marowak, Alolan Marowak is going to not have a fun time with Girafarig. Because Bone Club is going to be dealing neutral damage and Shadow Ball is going to be resisted by Girafarig, Alolan Marowak is going to have a hard time facing Girafarig. Girafarig will deal neutral damage with those confusions, neutral damage with Psychic, neutral damage with Thunderbolt, versus Alolan Marowak, if it's running Hex, Shadow Ball, and Bone Club, Hex and Shadow Ball are going to be dealing not very effective damage, and Bone Club is not that great of a move if it's not super effective. So Alolan Marowak is kind of left in a bind right there. And that one shield scenario, that's if Alolan Marowak is able to bait Bone Club's the first 2 shields. That's just the simulation and how it works. But if Alolan Marowak baits the first shield with the Bone Club, it can tie with Girafarig. So I think this is still a super positive matchup for Girafarig. Just keep that in mind when you're facing a Alolan Marowak, or if you're facing a Girafarig as a Alolan Marowak. Moving on to the next section, we have Dusclops, Banette, Medicham, and Lucario. So this Dusclops is running Hex and Shadow Punch and Fire Punch. So if it's running Feint Attack, it has a better matchup against Girafarig, but the recommended is Hex because of the energy gain. So with that in mind, a Dusclops does win the 0 and 2 shields matchup, but it does lose the 2 shields matchup because Confusion is going to be hitting Dusclops for that neutral damage, while Hex is not going to be dealing very effective damage to Girafarig. So by the time Girafarig uses 2 shields, that Confusion damage is just going to hit Dusclops enough to be able to take it out. So Banette is going to be able to take out Girafarig in the 0 shield situation, and that's because it has Thunder. So Thunder is going to hit Girafarig for neutral damage, and that is pretty much enough to knock out Girafarig. Girafarig is not a tanky Pokemon by any means, it's just the resistances that make Girafarig useful. So moving right along, we have Medicham and Lucario. So post the latest Power Up Punch nerf, they moved over to this section, but before the Power Up Punch nerf, they were actually in the section with Empoleon. So the Power Up Punch nerf made Girafarig much better against fighters, so it will win again in the 0 and 2 shield situation, but will lose in the 1 shield situation because the second Power Up Punch is going to deal a decent amount of damage to Girafarig. So the next section we have Empoleon. Empoleon is going to be resisting that Confusion damage due to its Steel typing. But it is part water as well, and Girafarig does have that Thunderbolt. So if Girafarig can hit that Thunderbolt, it will beat Empoleon. But if it can't, then Empoleon is dealing neutral damage to Girafarig with those waterfalls, and Girafarig is just kinda stuck there trying to get a Thunderbolt to land. And for the last section is going to be a bunch of Steel type Pokemon and Pokemon that are going to be receiving not very effective damage to those confusions. So the Psychics and the Steels are going to have very positive matchups against Girafarig. So yeah, if you match up against one of these types of Pokemon in the lead, try to get out or just sacrifice Girafarig so you don't give up switch advantage. Yeah, that's pretty much all the matchups in the Sinister Cup meta that you'll probably come across. Okay, so now I'm going to go through how I believe Girafarig will be best utilized in which role, whether it be a lead, a close, a mid-game, and how you should approach certain lineups and certain teams. Let's go. So I think I mentioned it before, but Girafarig's main source of damage is going to be from confusion. Therefore, if you come across a Pokemon that will be resisting confusion, Girafarig may not necessarily be a good matchup because Girafarig is pretty squishy. It is the only Pokemon that has a ghost resistance in the Sinister Cup. That makes it a very unique Pokemon in the meta and gives it a specific role, mainly as a ghost wall that can also defeat fighting types. Its normal type does leave room so that fighters can beat Girafarig, but that's not always the case, as we saw in the previous slide. Medicham and Lucario can win the one shield matchup, so it's kind of a situational case, but it still has a chance. The best position I believe Girafarig can be used in is the lead or as a closer with shields up. Now, a closer with shields up is kind of hard to force because it's really all based on your opponent, right? So the lead is probably going to be the more common position that you're going to be using Girafarig because you can control that, right? But with shields up as a closer, Girafarig can just surpass all those shields and just deal heavy confusion damage to whatever Pokemon your opponent might have. Now, what is best paired with Girafarig? Pretty much anything that's not a confusion user. And that's because Girafarig hits huge walls against Steel and huge walls against other Psychics. So if you bring in a fire type, a water type, anything that can deal with those two typings, I think Girafarig will have a good balance and be able to play off that other Pokemon. So the best time to use Girafarig is if you see a Haunter, because Haunter, if your opponent has it, is most likely going to use it in the lead. Drifblim, because all it has is ghost type moves, at least the preferred moveset. Hitmonchan and Alolan Marowak. Alolan Marowak, like I mentioned, is going to have to bait shields to beat Girafarig in the even shields matchup. And Hitmonchan, as you saw in the previous slide, that it will lose in all even shield matchups. So that's where Girafarig really shines, in that it can beat ghosts and fighting type Pokemon. Some Pokemon that you might want to think twice when you see them on your opponent's team are a double tank team, a Mawile, or a Feint Attack Dusclops. So these things, if you come across them on your opponent, like, really think hard about if you really want to use a Girafarig. If they're running a double tank, more than likely they're going to run one of them, and if they run one of them, there's also a chance that they'll run both of them. And if that's the case, Girafarig is almost completely useless because confusion is not going to deal very effective damage to those Pokemon. If you see a Mawile on your opponent's team, make sure you think twice because Girafarig is already a squishy Pokemon. Super effective bite damage is going to just shred Girafarig. When you see a Dusclops as well, always consider that they may be using Feint Attack. Feint Attack is going to be dealing super effective damage to Girafarig versus the not very effective damage of a Hex. So that's kind of hard to tell which one it is until they actually use it against you, but at least you should be aware that there is a possibility that your opponent is using a Feint Attack Dusclops and it will be dealing super effective damage to your Girafarig. Okay, so we're going to get into some battles with Girafarig. I'm battling Jake right here, and he leads off with Bastiodon against my Girafarig, and this is a terrible matchup. No matter what, I have to switch. Girafarig will just get completely walled with anything that I have. So I switch into Alolan Marowak, which still isn't the best matchup, but at least it can put a dent into Bastiodon. So Yeah, Bastiodon is one of the hard walls for Girafarig, so keep that in mind. If your opponent is running Bastiodon, Girafarig may not be the best option. So I'm going to send in Poliwag because I need to get rid of this Bastiodon. He does switch into Bronzong, and I'm going to get this Power-Up Punch off. Or is it Dynamic Punch? I forgot. Power-Up Punch. And he goes ahead and takes it, and that makes sense. I'm going to get this second Power-Up Punch off. Remember, Bronzong is dealing super effective damage to me right now, so I need to get out of there. So I'm going to stick in this matchup just because I'm going to take those confusions with neutral damage, and get this Thunderbolt off right here because that's also dealing neutral damage back to Bronzong if he decides to shield to take it. But he decides to shield it at this point. He decides to switch into his Bastiodon, so he uses his charge move. I go ahead and save it. He undertaps. That's because he wants to farm my Girafarig, and I send out my Poliwrath, and I over-tapped, and so I have to burn this shield at this point, and this Power-Up Punch is going to go. No, it doesn't. Okay, cool. So now I have a charge move ready, and I go ahead and use that Power-Up Punch, but he had a charge move already as well, and that's going to be the game. GG. Alright, so getting into this next battle, I lead off with Girafarig against Dusclops. So this is a good matchup, but his Dusclops is running Feint Attack. So this is actually ends up being a bad matchup for Girafarig. Feint Attack will actually deal super effective damage to my Girafarig, and that is why you see my Girafarig go down so fast. I go ahead and get this Psychic off, and he's going to decide to shield it because it would have dealt very large amounts of damage to him. He did burn a shield, but he's going to get a shield off of me right here. Actually, he overcharges his Dusclops and uses a Fire Punch, and he's going to get another Fire Punch off before I can get my Crunch off. So at this point, I decide to shield. I have 2 shields left, so Fire Punch blocked it. I'm going to try to farm him down, but I'm afraid of another Fire Punch, and I don't want to eat that if I don't have to. So I go ahead and just use the Crunch. Now I have a little less than half HP. He goes ahead and sends out Medicham. I go ahead and get this Crunch off. Neutral damage either way. He decides to block that, so that was a good choice on my part. He's gonna get a charge move off right here. I'm expecting a Power-Up Punch. Dynamic Punch. Yeah, that hurt. So all I have is Lucario, and this is a bad matchup for me. I'm going to shield this Ice Punch. He baited me. So Power-Up Punch and Shadow Ball. I go for the Shadow Ball, and this is going to knock out his Medicham, but he is using Psycho Cut, I think. Sends out Drifblim. So I think he's going to knock me out right here. Yes, if I had undertapped, maybe I could have gotten there, but not sure. Omnis win, Lucario squishy, GG. Alright, going up against Steve, PvP Steve. Check out his YouTube channel if you haven't. So this is the ideal matchup. Drifblim is going to be running double ghost type moves. A little lag right here, so we're just like waiting. But Girafarig has a great matchup right here. Those hexes are going to be dealing not very effective damage, and Confusion is going to do neutral damage back to Drifblim. And I know Drifblim has 2 ghost type moves, so he actually gets the boost though. So at this point, I know I need to get rid of this Drifblim because this is like my only counter to ghost type move Pokemon. So he decides to shield that, which is, yeah, if you have a boosted Drifblim, you need to protect it. So I go ahead and block that, and now I have Girafarig against his Poliwrath. He gets a charge move off right here, and I decide not to shield it. Power-Up Punch. Okay, cool. I get this Thunderbolt off, and just in the nick of time, he's going to have to shield this or risk letting it go. So I get 1 more Confusion off, and his Poliwrath is pretty close to dead, so send out my Dusclops. I have Feint Attack, so this isn't going to be dealing much damage, so I have to get this Shadow Punch off, otherwise he's gonna get another charge move off on me, and I didn't want to have to eat a charge move if I didn't have to. Sends Drifblim back out. I'm trying to get to that Shadow Punch, and I know I am gonna block this because I want to get that Shadow Punch off, but he switches, and I go ahead and use the Fire Punch. And this was kind of a, I don't know, I wanted some time to think. I switch into Steelix, so I should get this one. Even though he gets a Earthquake off on me first, I am going to get enough energy to get my own Earthquake off, and that will knock out his Steelix because I was able to get that Fire Punch off, and that's a good thing I did, because otherwise he would have gotten to a crunch before I was able to. So I'm able to get to this crunch and knock out his Drifblim, and that will be GG. Even with the boosted Drifblim, you see how strong Girafarig is against those ghost types. So on to the next battle. I started with Girafarig against his Medicham, so this is actually a closer matchup than it would have been before the update because Power Up Punch got nerfed. So in hindsight, I probably should have shielded the second Power Up Punch, but I go for this Psychic right here, and that's because I'm expecting him to shield, and I think I can only get to one charge move anyways. He knocks my Girafarig out, and I send out Dusclops. So Dusclops is going to deal not very neutral damage, and he's going to use a Power Up Punch. He shield baited me. He's going to get another charge move, and this time I think is going to be Psychic. Yep, Psychic. And he ends up switching out to Steelix. I get a Fire Punch off. Super effective damage, but not a ton of damage. I don't think I have a better option, and I have no more shields, so go ahead and get this Fire Punch off. And his Steelix is really close to being down, so that actually might be good for him because then my next Pokemon won't be able to farm him down. But I do get this last Fire Punch off, so he's either gonna have to shield or he's gonna let it fall. He decides to shield, and so close. He farmed so much energy. That was pretty risky, but yeah, that's pretty rough for me. He gets his Earthquake off. I get one Mud Shot, and he sends out Medicham, and this is really close, but he gets a charge move off on me, and that's going to be GG. Okay, so that's the video. I hope you guys learned some things about using Girafarig or even going up against it. Here are a couple key takeaways from the video. Number one is that it is the only type of Pokemon. It's the only Pokemon that's resistant to Ghost type moves in the Sinister Cup, which gives it a very unique position, very unique role in the Sinister Cup. So it's kind of counterintuitive because it is Psychic, but it's also normal, and usually that normal typing is a disadvantage, but in this case it's definitely an advantage to have that normal typing. Number two, the main source of damage is Confusion, so it's best to use it in the lead because it covers a lot of Pokemon, as you saw in the matchups sheet that I had earlier in the video. It covers a lot of Pokemon, and so your opponent might not exactly know what role it's doing. It's either going to be taking out ghosts or it's going to be taking out fighters. So it has dual roles versus where other Pokemon might only serve one role. Girafarig can serve two. But keep in mind, those steel types do pretty much wall Girafarig completely. And that's just something you have to work around. So also another location that you might want to put Girafarig is late in the game, because it does have two very hard-hitting charge moves in Thunderbolt and Psychic. So with shields down, to get one of those charge moves off is just going to nuke your opponent. Confusion also does a lot of damage even with shields up, so if they have been conservative with their shields, Confusion can just eat through those shields and not even have to worry about it, as long as your opponent does not resist Psychic moves. But yeah, those are the key takeaways. That's pretty much it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys did and learned something from it, please make sure you hit that thumbs up to like this video, and if you haven't already yet, please make sure you subscribe to keep up to date with any new content that I may come out with. I'm hoping to get more videos out. Sorry about last week, been really busy. But I'd also like to thank my patrons. You guys keep me motivated to keep on making videos, and that's pretty much it. If you guys would like to support me with Patreon, the link's in the description down below. And that's pretty much it for this video. Thanks guys, until next time, this is Best and West. I'll catch you guys later. Real quick, I wanted to plug the tournament that I'm going to be shoutcasting this Saturday at SFSU, hosted by the PokeGators. I'm going to be shoutcasting it live, while King IV is going to be shoutcasting it remotely in Toronto, and the stream is going to be produced by Taco himself. So if you're not already subscribed to King, go do that. If you're not already on the Taco truck, make sure you check him out too on Twitch. I'll leave both the links down in the description below. But if you're relatively close to San Francisco, please make sure you come out. I'd love to meet you guys and hang out. But yeah, that's pretty much. Till next time guys, Best and West. I'll catch you guys later.